Just when it looked like the field might be shrinking, another Democrat jumped into the presidential race. Former Massachusetts Governor Deval Patrick launched his campaign today with this video that references his Chicago roots. Patrick, who was a paid CBS News contributor until he launched his campaign, is now the 18th Democrat in the race. Skylar Henry reports from the White House.
Former Massachusetts Governor Deval Patrick added his name to the ballot for the New Hampshire primary, officially joining the 2020 Democratic presidential race.
I'm excited, I am humbled, and I am fired up.
One of the nation's first black governors, Patrick is positioning himself as a moderate candidate who can bring the country together. Ahead of his announcement, the 63-year-old called his senator, Elizabeth Warren, to tell the progressive candidate he's running too.
Frankly, she has the best and most disciplined campaign out there. But I think the actual business of advancing an agenda once elected is a different kind of undertaking.
Primary contests kick off in just a few months, and there could be even more candidates joining the Democratic race to challenge President Trump for the White House. Former New York City Mayor Michael Bloomberg hasn't announced his candidacy, but has recently filed to be on the ballot in Alabama and Arkansas, states that vote in key Super Tuesday primaries.
All I've got to do is, if I run, explain to people what I think is wrong with this country and how I would fix it.
Polls in the early voting states of Iowa and New Hampshire currently show former Vice President Joe Biden, along with Senators Warren and Bernie Sanders, and South Bend, Indiana Mayor Pete Buttigieg leading the crowded field. Skylar Henry, CBS News, the White House.
Ed O'Keefe and Caitlin Huey-Burns join me now. Ed is a CBS News political correspondent. Caitlin is a CBSN political reporter. Welcome to you both. All right, Ed, unlike Michael Bloomberg, Deval Patrick is not a billionaire. So how is he going to fund his campaign after this late start?
Good question, Elaine. We know that he's headed to California before going to Nevada this weekend, and most times people go to California to raise money. There's a reason to go to California to campaign as well, because they're up in Super Tuesday. But one could see him potentially holding a finance event while out there. He also admitted to reporters in New Hampshire today he doesn't see how this happens for him unless he falls back on the support of a PAC. Now, he can't put it together necessarily, so we'll see who potentially emerges to do that for him in the coming weeks. But he's probably right that he's going to need some kind of outside financial support to make this happen, if there is someone out there who actually wants to do it for him.
Interesting. Well, Caitlin, after leaving office, Patrick went to work at that private equity firm, Bain Capital, which was co-founded by Mitt Romney. The former governor was asked about how his work at Bain is different than Romney's. Let's go ahead and play that clip.
When I was co-chair of the Obama-Biden campaign in 2012, and there was all the attacks on Bain Capital on account of Mitt Romney. I was asked about that, and I didn't buy it then, and I don't buy it now. But I do think that capitalism, and I am a capitalist, has a lot to answer for. There are reasons why people, and justifiable reasons why people feel like our economy and our government has been tilted too much in the direction of moneyed interests. Some of those are companies, and some of those are individuals.
Caitlin, given the political climate right now among Democrats, you have people like Elizabeth Warren, who has called the private equity industry legalized looting. Is a response like that going to shield Deval Patrick from criticisms over his work at Bain?
Well, you have that sentiment going on in the party now, and you certainly had it in 2012. Remember, the Democrats were extremely effective in painting Mitt Romney as someone they called a corporate raider. Now, it's important to note that Deval Patrick, his involvement in Bain was on social impact giving, so a little bit different, but still, you could see this as a way for his Democratic opponents to be able to maybe paint him with the broad Bain brush, really. And it would be certainly something that he would have to explain over and over again. This is a party that has, Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren have been gaining ground, especially in the early states, especially in New Hampshire. And that's where the Patrick campaign really wants to focus, given that he's from a neighboring state. But Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders are too, and they already have extensive ground games. And that's what we're looking to see from Patrick, is not only Ed mentions the money, but also what the organization looks like, what his constituency actually is, what his theory of the case is for his bid.
So, Ed, we know that Patrick spoke with former President Barack Obama about his candidacy. Joe Biden often touts, of course, his relationship with Mr. Obama on the campaign trail. But is this something we should expect from Deval Patrick as well?
Well, what we should expect is that the former president has spoken with virtually every Democrat running for president as a courtesy. We know that he's had conversations with everyone from Joe Biden to Deval Patrick to Steve Bullock and Julian Castro and Elizabeth Warren. They all call as a courtesy, asking for his advice on how to run. And the line from his office is always that he's happy to talk to them about what they should do in order to try to convince voters to vote for them. And that's about it. But otherwise, his office continues to say he is staying out of the race. He's not putting his thumb on the scale for anyone in particular and wants to see this play out. As he said when Biden got into the race earlier this year, I was that upstart who wouldn't have appreciated having party leaders say who should get the nomination. Everyone's got to win this on their own, as he did, and therefore he's going to stay out of it. But conversations between him and Obama are understandable because Patrick and Obama have been protégés for most of this century. And earlier this century, they shared a political advisor in David Axelrod, who had worked on Patrick's gubernatorial campaign and Obama's first Senate campaign. And many saw Patrick winning statewide as one of the nation's first black governors, and certainly the first in the 21st century, as a signal that someone like Obama could potentially make a successful run for president. And so they are, in essence, reflections of each other's work and success as they climb the political ladder. And so we'll see now in the coming days, as Caitlin said, who sort of coalesces behind him, whether there's any sign of the Obama coalition or veterans of the Obama campaigns and administration that joined forces with him. Yeah, that'll be fascinating to watch. Meantime, Caitlin, today is the deadline for candidates to qualify for the debate stage, the Democratic debate in Atlanta next week. Two who were on stage last month did not make the cut. Beto O'Rourke, who dropped out, of course, and Julian Castro. How concerned should the Castro campaign be at this point? Well, remember last month they made that kind of last-minute money push, trying to raise $800,000 by the end of October. They reached that threshold, but at the very end. And it's interesting to see how the Castro campaign has been operating. Remember last week he came out, or maybe it was earlier this week, came out very forcefully criticizing the process of Iowa and New Hampshire going first. Saying there's a lack of diversity in those states, which a lot of Democrats will say privately, but the ones that are doing well in this primary are not being critical of that process. And I think that gives you an indication, perhaps, of kind of how they're playing this. But we have seen the debates play an outsized role in winnowing this field. Even those who have not made the stage, who have continued to stay in, Steve Bullock, Michael Bennet, they're not doing well in the polls, and they're struggling to raise money and trying to figure out where their campaigns go next. It does raise a lot of questions about the vitality of a campaign. All right. Ed O'Keefe, Caitlin Huey-Burns, I'm afraid we're out of time. Thank you both very much. Take care.